Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us. If you are on our own platform, our own training platform, welcome. Thanks for supporting the business and being part of the team and the organization community. This is one of our first times where we're multi-streaming to several different platforms. So if you're joining us on any of the other platforms, including YouTube, welcome as well, folks. And we're going to be covering a topic that's very dear to my heart, which is wireframing, and particularly wireframing in PowerPoint. And this is something that I've been working on for the last couple of years to how to make it really, really easy for people who are non-technical and aren't necessarily data visualization experts, but how do we make you dangerous enough and those folks dangerous enough, particularly with a tool that is easily accessible and most people have, which is PowerPoint, or any tool really that you can open up PPT files in. So let's get stuck in. As we go through this, folks, we're going to be I'm going to be sharing some templates with you later on in the session, and so feel free just to sit back, relax, grab a coffee, and take it all in. And we'll have time for Q&A as we go through. Of course, you can always just type in a chat as well if you do want to ask me a question during it. I'm happy to address them. Okay, so let's just cover what we're talking about today. So firstly, I'm going to touch off the problems that are being solved by wireframe. So why would we want to wireframe? Why are we doing that? And then particularly the specific problems that we're solving by wireframing. Another thing we want to be able to look at here is the why is it PowerPoint? Why not other tools? And I have some thoughts and feelings that I'm going to share about that. But what I used to do when I used to wireframe, it was always in Adobe Illustrator, and that's because my background is UI and user experience and software development. And so I basically used the tools I was comfortable with. And PowerPoint, is like it's very different. It's a very different tool to Illustrator and some of the Adobe tools out there, but it works very well. And I'm going to talk to you why it works well and what some of the benefits of doing that. And then I'm going to talk to you about the approach. So it's fine to use PowerPoint and a set of templates, but also you need to match it to an approach and a process to be able to do that successfully. Then I'm going to do the actual practical application. So I'm going to work through an example. And if if you're on our own platform, you've seen our typical process that we use. I'm going to quickly summarize that. And particularly, folks, if you're joining us on any of the other platforms, you might have seen the process. So I'm going to highlight that and summarize where we fit in the PowerPoint wireframing application here. But I'm going to be using that same example that I always use, which is the HR analytics on the Death Star. HR being a topic we can probably mostly understand, maybe not the detailed nuance of it, but it's a generally useful use case for us to be able to appreciate and comprehend. Then finally, we're going to be sharing with you the place where you can go get your PowerPoint templates yourself, so you can start doing this stuff today. And of course, there'll always be time for a Q&A at the end. And so I think there's going to be lots of time for Q&A at the end because I'm going to get through this content pretty quick. If you don't know me, I've been doing this stuff for a number of years now, and we've trained a lot of people, and it's been something that I both have to apply it with my own clients and our own clients. So we're a consulting firm, very small one, G&K Consulting. And everything you see here, all the content that you're going to see presented here and the approaches we use with our clients. And so we're only going to show you stuff that works. And a bit of the difference of what we end up doing versus other organizations, particularly training organizations in this space, is we're highly pragmatic and practical. So I really don't share any theory that isn't actually used and that we don't use ourselves. So with that in mind, so just a reminder that you're going to get these templates at the end, but please do stick around to the end, and I'll be sharing that with you. And the reason I want you to stick around to the end, I want you to see how to use it first, and not just give you the templates right out of the gate. So I want you to see how to use it and get the most out of it. What I don't want to happen is just you get the templates and they're just sitting there and you're not maximizing them at all. So a little bit about myself. If you don't know me, of course, I'm Nicholas Kelly, and here's a super high level blurb of where I come from. So my background is user experience, user interface design, and over the course of some years, I started to move into consulting, analytics consulting. I had the very good fortune to work with Deloitte Analytics over in Singapore. Then I moved over with the firm over to the US and spent many years doing analytics consulting, and that's what I still do, but for our own small organization now, where we very much focus on the requirements gathering aspects of analytics and business intelligence, as well as the topic today, which is wireframing. And I will say wireframe is what we do most of the time. It is the main topic that we cover with our clients. So with that out of the way, you might also know me for the Dashboard Wireframe Kit. So what we're going to be doing today is the PowerPoint version of this, right? And you're going to see there's some differences between this kit and what we're going to be doing with PowerPoint. But if you do want to check it out, we do have a sale on right now, 50% off if you want to go get the physical version of the kit. So you just go to deliveringdataanalytics.com to get that. So I promised we're going to talk about some of the challenges that we're solving with wireframing, and think of just as wireframing in general at a high level. And then we're going to get into the PowerPoint aspects of that. But firstly, many of our dashboards just lack the so what. So maybe some of the reasons you're here is to create more impactful dashboards, and wireframing can help that. Now, it's not the only thing that can help that. There are other things, but we can tackle it in wireframing. And often we end up with dashboards and reports that fail to create business value. So we're just not generating any business value. And again, wireframes can help address that, but not the only way to do it. But if you're wanting a single place, a single step in a process where you can address a lot of these things, it's in wireframing. We can have poor alignment between our end users, between our stakeholders and the consumers of our dashboards, as well as one of the hot topics we hear in analytics is actionable insights, and it's really becoming overused, and it's an easy phrase to use, but it's really hard to do in application. And that's where wireframing can help us visualize, okay, well, we want these actions, but what does that look like, and how do we represent that, right? And how do we make sure that's going to happen? And another one that we get all the time is chart junk, right? So we end up with lots of things on our dashboard that isn't really driving any value or driving any action. So wireframing can solve these, and it's a way to do it, a very visual way to do it, as well as a way to collaborate with people. So why PowerPoint? Why would we use PowerPoint for doing wireframes? Now, like I mentioned, I used to do typically all my wireframing in Adobe Illustrator, some in Adobe XD, and I've started moving over to PowerPoint. Now, why is that? Well, most people don't have a Adobe Illustrator license. And so if I wanted people to just kind of go offline, spend their time looking at some wireframes and tweak them, adjust them, maybe edit the titles of the charts, change the charts, any of those things, that's cumbersome, right? And they just couldn't do it because firstly, they don't have a license for the Adobe Suite, and secondly, they don't know how to use that tool. Now, a tool that is very prevalent in most organizations is PowerPoint, or OneNote, or any of the other tools that might be out there that you can open PPT files. So PowerPoint just became a natural tool to look at and see, could we make the wireframing approach work in PowerPoint? And the answer is yes. It's pretty straightforward with a few caveats. So the first difference you notice between using a tool like Illustrator is you can do what's called high fidelity wireframes in Adobe Illustrator. And that's like, it's going to look very much like it would be built in your dashboarding tool. So that's high fidelity. And there's pros and cons to using high fidelity. In PowerPoint, what we're going to be doing is what's called a low fidelity wireframe, which is more like, low fidelity. You will not mistake it for a real dashboard. It's very hard to look at that and go, no, that's actually a dashboard. Think of it akin to like sketching up your wireframes on a whiteboard. People clearly understand it's not connected to data. And that's one of the downsides with doing high fidelity wireframes is people might just get hung up on, hey, it looks great, but those numbers are wrong. Right? And it's like people can get led down a path with high fidelity wireframes. Now there's times you definitely want to use them, but a fairly safe bet to go with is low fidelity wireframes, and that's what we're going to be doing in PowerPoint. So the dashboard wireframe kit, it uses cards by intent because it's clearly low fidelity, not connected to data. That's what we want with PowerPoint as well. The other thing with PowerPoint is it's going to make it really easy for people to collaborate. So there's some capabilities that PowerPoint already has, like being able to write comments, being able to write notes, and being able to share quickly and easily across the Microsoft ecosystem. So there's lots of benefit to doing that. So you could hand a wireframe off to someone in PowerPoint, and they could come back a few days later with tweaks and changes to it. And so it's a good way to collaborate and get feedback as well on wireframes. Awesome. Okay, so let's get stuck in. So I want to do a quick reminder of the overall, where wireframing sits in the overall process. And folks, let me just read off a few chats there. So Jake, yeah, you're saying, very good. Okay, yeah, Jake, you're just saying that you use the wireframe kit. Okay, yeah, awesome. No, that's great. Thank you. And okay, there's another one. Yeah, if I bought the book, is this the same set of templates? Yes, same set of templates. And they're the templates I'm going to be sharing later on as well. So don't sweat it. If you got the book, you already have these templates. And I see YouTube, Vizlib, wonderful topics, and our team has applied many of your tips and work. Oh, awesome. Great to hear that. Thanks very much. Okay, so the overall process that we're using from a very, very high level is one of the mindset changes that we need to have in our teams to use wireframes, utilize wireframes. And we just really need to have a product perspective, right? So imagine you've got you're part of a BI team, analytics team, analytics function. Maybe you're by yourself, right? But whatever it is, you're in the business of creating products, right? Anytime we create a product, you want to prototype it, right? You want to have some means of testing it before you put it out to the wider audience and wider market. And generally speaking, in analytics and BI, we have two types of market, two segments within our market. We have our stakeholders. They're the people that are that hold the budget strings to building our dashboards, our reports. And then we've got our end users, right? And they're easy to identify because they're the people that are basically who we're designing for. And sometimes there's overlap between those two. But if we are creating a product, we have to be giving value, right? So why would our market want to buy our product, our dashboard, our report? Because we have to convey value, and to convey value, we need to gather requirements. So a really good way for us to get requirements out of people and to work together and align on them to make sure we're delivering value is to wireframe. So that's what we're going to be focusing on here. As part of each pillar, so consider the team, the product, the requirements, and the market a pillar. Over the last 15, 20 years of doing this, there are a number of skills that come together to be able to be successful as a team to deliver dashboards that are valuable and impactful. And so one of the things that we can look at here is how do you break this down into a set of skills and capabilities under each of these areas. And of course, there's many ways of looking at this, but this is one way to look at it. And if we were to roll these up into three really big, broad buckets, there is data and analytics skills, of course, and that's kind of the table stakes here. But a really big one is change management. Right? How do we manage change? And if we are truly delivering on the promise of analytics, that we're going to transform organizations with analytics, well, no transformation happens without change and change management. So that's another element. And then UI and UX, I kind of bundle those two together. So what I'm going to show you is the set of skills that I think an organization needs to have in order to be successful. And I'm not going to go through this exhaustively at all. I've done that in other sessions. But just really to say that what we're focusing on here today is the wireframing component of that. And if we look at that in terms of the enterprise dashboard process that we use and we teach as part of our courses, it's the step cleverly named wireframing. And so that's you can do all of these things beforehand. And if you really want to be comprehensive in delivering insight in your organization, for sure, you want to do all the steps. But if you're really in a pinch and you don't have time, but you want to do something, use the wireframe PowerPoint templates that we're going to be talking through today. So that kind of just dials in what we're going to be covering, its context in a wider process and a set of skills, and then when you would use this. And I would advocate not necessarily use it just in isolation, but if you have to, you can get a lot of the value and impact just through using wireframing. So let's get into it. Okay, I'm sorry, just a couple of questions there coming in. Is this different to what you do with the Insight Analyst course? Yes, in the Insight Analyst course, it's just focused on what you see in the green section. So that's just it. That course is a deep dive into that. Okay, yep, great. Oh, thanks, Joe. Yeah, appreciate that. Joe, I'm a fan of your work. Love what you do. Follow you on LinkedIn. Folks, if you are on LinkedIn, check out Joe Warburton. I think Joe, you're in the UK, are you? I can't remember. No, you were in the US. There was something to do with the UK. I can't remember. We'll have to catch up at some point. So, folks, let me just set the context here a bit for what we're going to do. Firstly, I'm going to show you why we're doing this, the overall approach. Right? So how do we wireframe? And we have to set some guardrails first, and then I'm going to show you wireframing. So let's do that. So to be successful, really, in any endeavor, is we need a goal, and that goal has to drive some sort of action. Right? So there has to be some sort of impact that we're going to have. And so look at change, right? Look at change and change management at a very, very high level. Any action we take should be aligned to a goal. Now let's dial that into what we're talking about. We're talking about dashboards, we're talking about reports and visualization. So our vehicle for doing that is going to be something that's visual. It doesn't have to be, but in this case, in this context, that's what we're talking about. So we have a goal, our set of goals. We're trying to get to some sort of action. And how we're going to do that is through a person seeing something, reacting to it, and then taking action on it. Right? So that's fundamentally what we're trying to do. So how do we do that? Right? So we have to give a little bit more context, because it can be too high level to go straight from a goal to visuals to a set of actions. So we put something in the middle there, which is questions. Right? So we have a goal. What questions would we need to answer that are aligned to that goal, that are going to drive a certain set of actions? Action or actions. And then what visuals do we need in order to facilitate and support that? So that's it from a super high level. So what's a question? So an example of a question would be, for a typical organization business performance type dashboard would be, what was our gross revenue so far this year compared to last year? Right, that's the type of question we're looking for. It's not too high level. Like, are we winning? Are we being successful? That's a fine question, but we need to break that down to more detail. This question is nicely broken down to some detail already. We're qualifying what revenue is, so we're not saying it's just revenue. We're saying gross revenue, because the next natural question could be, well, is it gross or net revenue? So this one's already saying gross. And we're giving it a time component here. We're bucketing it. We're saying so far this year, so it's a year to date, we want to see it. And then also a comparison to last year. Okay, so year on year. So we want year to date and year on year. That's a nicely qualified question, right? And so let's just keep that in mind as we go into this process. And we're going to firstly look at an approach that I use time and again, which is using sticky notes. And we're going to look at it in the context of the Death Star. So Death Star HR Insights. So let's start here. Imagine these are your sticky notes, right? You can do this on a whiteboard, and you have these 4 columns, right? Remember those steps that we talked about? You have a goal, you have a question, you have a visual, and you have an action. Now, you can have multiple sticky notes for any one of these. It's a one-to-many, can be many-to-many relationships. So we have a goal. And let's say our goal is to reduce attrition by 2% in a year. Now, this is one of the hardest things to do in the enterprise. Regardless, like you're building dashboards, it's really hard to get people to define a goal that's going to keep everyone honest. And I think, like, generally, if you don't do this, you're already inviting low adoption. It's really hard to define to build a dashboard that is going to be successful if we don't have defined measurable goals. And so an easy one here could be reduce attrition. Yeah, sure. Who doesn't want to reduce attrition, right? But no one's going to be held accountable to that. If you reduce it by 1 person in a year compared to last year and call that a win, yeah, technically it's reducing attrition. So goal formulation is vitally important. And you don't have to have a lot of goals. You could just have one goal, right, that a dashboard is driving towards. And I advocate for not more than 6 in general. But for example, this goal here, reduce attrition by 2% in a year. We're all going to be held accountable to that. So let's make sure whatever goes into this dashboard is driving towards that goal. And we're going to keep ourselves honest and make sure we're going to try and do that. So with that in mind, let's look at the question. A question, there could be many. In this example, the question is, well, to understand that a little bit better, I need to know what are the top causes of attrition. So that's a question aligned to that goal. Because if I'm going to try and reduce attrition, of course, I have to know the levers I have to play with. So what can I pull in order to reduce attrition? So firstly, I have to understand and comprehend what the problem is. So for our example here, so we keep going and we say, okay, well, what's a visual I need to see? And this one is, a table with each reason ranked in order of impact. So think of reasons people might be attriting from an organization on the Death Star. It might be, too much time with Darth Vader, and time spent with Darth Vader is very high risk, incredibly high risk time. So you could probably have some correlation between time with Darth Vader and attrition, and attrition being very terminal in that case. So not voluntary attrition, certainly involuntary, and this is coming from the end user. So, this isn't us saying, hey, we think you need to see this. This is a conversation with the end user, right? And it's like, what would you need to see? And this does 2 things for us. One is it's involving the end user, right? So change management, right? We're involving them, we're getting them engaged, right? And we're getting their input. So they feel like they have agency in the process. But another thing it's doing is if we want to apply data visualization best practices, which of course, we absolutely want to be able to do that. But what if there's a strong existing user preference for a certain chart type? And that may well be the case. It's often not, but it may well be the case. And it can be something that gets us hung up. And if you've been on, those of you on the delivering data analytics platform, that story I talk about with that C-suite executive. And the one where I didn't think he should use pie charts. But he wanted pie charts. And it was an early lesson for me, right? So the idea that there was a user preference, and generally speaking, I tend to say user preference overrides data viz best practice if it's going to cost us adoption. And we can iterate through it, right? So we don't have to get our way for data viz best practices right out of the gate if it means people are not going to use it or it's going to cause unnecessary friction. We can get there over time. So this step is to afford us the opportunity to see if there is a preference currently, and there might be, and maybe the preference is just because that's what they're used to looking at, right? That's what I'm used to. That's what I've seen. That's what I've used. I always use a table. Fine. Okay, great. So we're documenting that. And what action might be driven with this? For example, this action, right? If the total of Darth Vader related attrition is over 7%, he needs to go on HR training. right? Maybe some sensitivity training, some other things. And obviously there's tons of actions that could come out of this. So if we look at this here, we got a goal, reduce attrition by 2% in a year. And then if we look at an action, and we could have many actions, but we're just documenting one here. The action here is if the total of Darth Vader related attrition is over 7%, send them on HR training. So there's a action that's in support of that goal, right? So we're noticing that Darth Vader drives a lot of attrition, right? And it could potentially get up to 7%. So if Darth Vader goes on that training and, who knows if he doesn't kill everyone in the training, he might attrite less people over time, and that can help us do a little bit better over time. So this is the journey, the path, the simplest that I've seen over the years, where if we want to be successful and build dashboards that have a so what, this is the thinnest veneer of requirements you need to get in order to be successful. And you can see then there's a fidelity from going from stakeholders, which is goals, to actions, which is more user focused. Right? So we're also going across the scale of the market that we're designing for. Folks, I know there's a few questions coming in here. So do you generally have more than one? Yeah, more than one question? Yes? Yeah. Yeah, Jake, we do. Usually what I usually end up doing is I'll have a goal, and then I'll think of the actions first. What are the types of actions that can drive us towards that goal? And then you can fill in the pieces in the middle. And okay, so the question is, should you follow this exact process? Okay. It's up to you. So like I was saying, I start with a goal and I end with a set of actions. And then I fill in the stuff in the middle. But I've also done it exactly this way. It really just depends who I'm working with, which is start with the goal, what questions you need to answer to understand the parameters and levers of that goal. What do people need to see? And then what action are we driving? Now, if you want to really mix things up, right, with your clients, right, internal or otherwise, I would start with the goal and then actions. What goals do you have and what actions are going to drive towards that goal? Because it's a little bit different to how people are used to understanding and interpreting things. Let me just look at YouTube there, folks. So we got awesome. Yes. That's right, Joe. Yes, I know. Yes, you were US based, but now, yes, you're Vislib and Astrato London based. Awesome. Yeah, folks, check out Vislib if you get a chance. You had us at Star Wars. Love it. Your dashboard is no better than Rebel Scum. Brilliant. Brilliant. Joe, you're saying, how long should a dashboard live? What if it answers the question? Should it go away? Oh, I love that. Yeah. And Joe, you're. I know you'd have a ton of good, valuable inputs on that. My take on it is, I tend to assume a dashboard is attached to a persona, and that a dashboard evolves roughly every 3 months. And so it needs to go through updates, of iterations, and like if we are impacting the business with our dashboard, the business should be changing. And so then we need to reassess the parameters for what that dashboard and what change that dashboard is doing and what actions it's driving. And sometimes like 3 months may be too long for an organization, maybe it's too short. But what we want to strike is that balance between how long it takes to build a dashboard, which can be quick, not all the time, but it can be, compared to the amount of time it takes to drive change management. So if we have a dashboard that's really impactful to the organization, right, and it's going to drive change, we have to afford the time to be able to do that. So generally speaking, I just say 3 months. But it's how long's a piece of string as well. So I tend to find 3 months is relatively safe, to allow some change to happen and to manage that change over time. So the impact of that dashboard is having the effects felt within the organization. So we're managing that. So yeah, generally that's what I find. Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I love that question. Thank you. Okay, so let's look into how we do this in PowerPoint. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip over to the template. So you're going to download this template right after this session here, but I'm going to show you what it looks like first. So this is it. This is the template. This is as simple as it gets, and you're going to see it's not exactly the same as both the dashboard wireframe kit, the physical version of it. There's some differences because it's in PowerPoint. So if you know the dashboard wireframe kits, you know the cards have a visualization side, which is just what the chart looks like. Here's the axes. Right? You flip it around, on the other side of the card, it has the requirements, basically. What question is this answering and what action is it driving? So how do we do that in PowerPoint? Because we don't have two sides of the cards. So what we have here is there's space on the left side to be able to put in some of that detail. All right, so let's take this example here. And this is exactly what I end up doing most of the time when I'm in a pinch, right? And I need to do wireframes pretty quick. So you can see the layout. We've got a target personas and goals that we're driving towards. All right, so it's a small space, right? So we're not looking for essays here because people won't have time to do it. What questions are we answering? This tab specifically, and then what actions are we driving? So you would just copy and paste this as many times as you need it for as many tabs as you're going to have. And you can see we can put in the title of our tab, how often we think the data should be refreshed, because that's always a hot topic and can be a source of many a conversation, of course. And in this one, we've got the operation layout. And we've got two different layouts here. But firstly, this layout is the typical one. I end up using this for tactical and operational type dashboards where we have our KPIs at the top. We got some space for charts and some space for filters. But you also see there's the strategic layout, which I probably use 10-20% of the time, which is just like, hey, who do I need to shout at type dashboard, right? It's all KPIs. Who do I need to shout at? I'm not necessarily seeking to drive action in the dashboard or from the dashboard. I'm expecting other people to drive the action. And so they're slightly different example. Further down here, we've got the actual charts, right? So how this works is you basically pick the chart that you want, or you talk to your end users and say, hey, which chart would you like to answer that question? And we'd copy and paste it back into our template over there. So we've got a few different chart types here. So the ones that are just generally supported by most of the platforms. And then we got a few KPI types just to make it easy to get them. So if you want to do a really simple KPI with just a big number, sure, just copy and paste that one. One with a bit more context, and then a KPI that's got even more context. And a KPI without context is nearly pointless. And so most of the time you should really be going for one of these two. And then filters. All right, so let's go jump in and go up to our example here. So I'm going to call this attrition, Death Star attrition. Okay, that's our tab, and we're going to say, you know what, we want, because Darth Vader's doing stuff daily, so we want a daily update on that. And it's high risk stuff, right? So we want to, maybe even real time updates on that. So who we're designing for. So let's just say we're designing for HR managers. Okay, so that's who we're designing for, personas. We could have more, of course, but I'm going to keep it simple for now. And let's define some goals. So let's just say we're, that we'll take that goal we were talking about earlier. Reduce attrition by 2% this, let's say, this financial year. Assuming the Death Star has a financial year, a fiscal year. It probably does. I mean, it's an enormous effort to have built that and maintain it. I'm sure they use financial standards. Okay, and we could come up with more goals here. But generally speaking, I think it's good. It's usually good to limit the number. But let's just also add in something here. Maybe, it's very related to that other goal, but reduce total cost of attrition by, let's say, let's assume they use US dollars. per year. Okay. Okay, just questions there, folks. So you said you prefer to limit goals to 6. How do you manage scope creep? Great question. Scope creep is going to happen in a couple of ways. Firstly, we're designing for too many people. So if we looked at HR managers, it's like that's a reasonably well-defined persona that exists as an organizational role, and so it's an easy one to hook onto. But what if we also said, oh, we're designing for recruiters, we're designing for HR associates, we're designing for the chief HR officer, HR directors, we're designing for departmental heads that are people managers. You're going to get scope creep. Pretty much guaranteed to get scope creep. So one way to address it, not the only, but one way, is to be very focused on a certain persona. So that's one. Also, education. Anytime I'm in a new organization and I'm going to do this process, I'll spend maybe 20-30 minutes with the team educating and aligning on the process and say and get consensus and agreement, because usually it's like, oh well, yes, we want to build dashboards that are actionable and that impact the business, and this is how you do it. And so the more we deviate from this, the less likely we're going to realize the goals that we have. So and I would say one of the biggest things I struggle with is getting actual measurable goals on paper. That's really hard to do, and but if we don't do that, it's super easy to get scope creep as well. And so that there are a couple of parameters for scope creep, and of course you're probably aware there's more there. Okay, and yeah, Vislib, you were just answering there as well. Sometimes we say to our stakeholders that you can only have one screen dashboard. Oh, I love that. Yeah. I'm actually working on a project right now, and one of the stakeholders said something very similar to that. He said, what if you can only have 6 charts? What if you can only have 4 KPIs? What are they going to be? And sort of like a forcing function to do it. What I usually like to do is educate at the start. We're following a best practice, right? And in order to follow that best practice, this is what we have to do. And you can see here, these spaces, like they're not big, right? There's not a lot of space to put in all the personas and all the goals. It's by design, right? We want to limit that. And yeah, Vislib, I love that point about using the 12 point font size. You could totally get someone putting in like a 6 point here and put in loads of stuff. And so that's one way to avoid it. So education, we're adhering to a best practice. If we don't want to use a best practice, who doesn't want to use a best practice, right? Because it sounds ridiculous when you put it that way, But this best practice requires that we limit our number of goals to 6, and we design for very targeted personas. And one core truth from UX is, if we're designing for everyone, we're really designing for no one. And that's one of those things that I love to impart to people on our courses is change management, awareness, and user experience, like just the fundamentals of user experience, because they can really transform how you build build dashboards and reports, and very much manage scope creep, right? Great question, love it, thank you. Let me just check on our platform here. Oh, why 3 filters? Why only 3 filters? Okay, yeah. Okay, thanks, Pat. Yeah. Okay, so why 3 filters? Pat, on module 4 of the dashboard adoption formula, we get into that in detail if you want to check it out, if you haven't seen that one yet. But reason why we do only 3 filters, sure, you could have more. It's kind of similar to the scope creep persona issue. If we're designing for a lot of personas, we're going to end up with more filters, generally speaking. And I try to set myself the goal. I almost never reach this goal. I try to set myself the goal of not having any filters. And to do that, you need a very narrow focus on a individual persona. And usually I don't end up being in that situation, unfortunately. But it's a challenge I set myself. So if you find yourself having more than 3 filters, there's a couple of things you can check. Firstly, who are you designing for? Have you defined it well enough? And secondly, is this something that maybe could be spread across multiple tabs, right? And or do we have too many goals? I think there's a few things you can look, like symptoms of why that might have happened. Awesome. Okay, thank you. So let's carry on here. So our question that we want to be able to answer. So let's say the one we had earlier is, what are the top causes of attrition? Okay, great question to ask. And right, so if we know those, like, so what if we knew the list of questions? And so that's where we can start wireframing a little bit here. Let's go down, and at the time they'd said, a table, I'd like a table, but the wireframes here, we could just go say, yeah, you want the table, but would it be better, if you represented it this way, right? And each bar is like a reason for attrition, and the size of the bar is how many people attrited for that reason. Right, so we can have a conversation with people. So it's a nice way to do it. So I'm just going to copy this one. Let's say we agreed with the end user that this is the way they want to go. And we can just drop in a chart. And let's put it here for now. And this one is answering the question. What are the top causes of attrition? Okay, so we got that one. And let's put in causes on the y-axis, and on the x-axis we can have number of people that had that reason for attrition. Okay, so we got that. So we've addressed that question. And maybe there's some basic stuff we should have there. Well, if we're talking about number of people, sure, we probably want a KPI that's going to talk about the actual number of people that have left our organization, right? So that's a natural question that would come up as we're having our conversations. So we could say, yep, let's go put that up here. We got a KPI, and let's just pop it in that position. And let's say, okay, attrition count. This is not a dollar, it's a actual number. And okay, so we can leave that as that. And we can say, okay, well, what is the change year to date? So we've got, it's not a dollar number, of course, but there is how is that change year to date? And how is it doing against plan? Right, so we know we want plan in there because we have a goal. Right, we have an overall goal that we're driving towards, and so if we have a goal, we should be able to know what number do we want to get down to. And question: do you not put in the actual numbers? I go back and forth on this. If I want to go fast, no, I don't put in a number. Right, so like the actual number here. So let's say you had a directional number. So if I was to do it, it would be like we need something directionally correct. So let's say, on the Death Star, I don't know. Let's say we're doing this as a daily dashboard. So we're saying it's maybe, I don't know how many people would have tried from a Death Star every day. It's probably big. Let's say 200 people. So it's just directionally correct. And, we could say, well, that's gone up by, year to date, directional number, it's up by, let's just say 100. So it's like, oh, wow, that's striking. That's a lot. Right, and we want our daily number to be at 50. Right, so we're way off that. And so if you can get the conversation going, I would definitely put in the numbers. It's a great question. But I also say when I'm in a pinch, I usually don't. Right? It's just, let's just get something up there and then we can discuss it later. So if you look at this is answering that first question. What are the top causes of attrition? And it's aligned to that goal. We want to reduce attrition by 2% this year. And you can see it's also aligned to that goal to reduce the cost of attrition by 100 million. But that would also suggest we need another KPI. So if we have that goal, how are we measuring that goal? And how are we tracking towards that goal? So let's go grab another KPI and put in cost of attrition. Okay, so cost of, okay, and we could, so this is a daily cost. We could do annual as well if we wanted to. We just need to make that clear to the user. Well, let's just put in a daily figure here, and it's costing us how many? 200 people. Say 200 people, fully burdened rate of. Let's just assume it's $100,000. Geez, my math. Is that 20 million? Let's just say 20 million. Forgive me if the math is horrible here. And yeah, sometimes you might have to stretch it out a little bit to get it to fit in. Or you can just reduce the font size. And we could say, yeah, that's gone up by, I don't know, let's just say 50 million. We're not happy about it. Year to date. And what else? Yeah, plan. So our plan is to reduce the overall cost of attrition by 100 million. So if that's a daily number, we probably want that down at, something like under $1 million a day, but yeah, just something directional. So we're way off here. So you can see with this process, right, how we can start to dial in, right? And one of the actions we said we were going to have is, well, we want to have, the Darth Vader attend HR training if Darth Vader related attrition is greater than 7%. So we don't have a chart that tells us that. Well, we kind of do, I suppose. If we're documenting the reason for attrition is Darth Vader related, right? So one of these bars could be Darth Vader related attrition. But it's an action we're driving, so let's put it as a KPI as well. So we're really going to draw someone's attention to this if that is indeed the problem that's happening. So let's grab another KPI. Okay, and get this guy here. Okay. Darth Vader attrition. Okay, so let's just say we give it a number. We want it as a percentage. So today, let's say it's at 6%. Right, and we're like, oh, we're a little bit worried about that. It's gone, it's up 2% year to date. Or maybe we want that month to date or week to date. And we see how that's changing. So something's happened in the last week compared to last week that this has gone up a lot. And our plan, we're never going to get rid of Darth Vader related attrition. But let's say we want to get it to 3%. All right, and that's what we're driving towards. So we can see here, using this process and methodology, how you could get to a way for us to wireframe from those very, very basic light requirements all the way over to something that's a little bit more comprehensive. So that's one way I use the wireframes, right? So it's a very sort of pragmatic way of doing things. Another way, the design approach I use is if I'm thinking, hey, this topic's about people, and there might be a lot of people in this organization, or it might be about products. And if there's a lot of products, one design pattern, here's just some bonus content for you folks. One design pattern I end up using frequently is just say, okay, well, if we're looking for outliers, or we're looking for patterns in a large population of things, what we could do here is maybe who is at risk of attrition, and a dot being a person, or maybe it's a department, right? But let's leave it as a person for now, and let's assume then the top left are people that are at risk of attrition, and so we'd have to come up with what the X and Y axes in order for that to make sense. We could also then get some filters. I'm just going to grab one here. All right, and so how do we want to filter this? So I probably want to see these things by department. And let's put in department. And it's always a good idea to give examples of departments or examples of any filter. So sales, marketing on the Death Star. I don't know that they would have either of those departments. And let's say finance, accounting, etc. So we could have any number there. Cool. Okay, so a couple of questions coming in there. So are we, what other charts would you use for HR? Oh, HR specific. I'm doing one recently where I'm using this stack bar an awful lot. Actually, the 100% stack bar. which isn't here. But it's using a lot for HR. And so you'd have, for example, let's say the, each of the colors in the bar. So you might have level, so first level might be manager. You might have senior manager, and then director and above, right? And you see the breakdown there. I've been using that more often than not in HR. Joe, you were saying, curious as if this came up yesterday, is there a table of details on this wireframe, one that lists? Is that one of the last charts, or does that live on another page of the dashboard? Yeah, it's just in here. I just have them in here, Joe. It's like the basic ones, It's just like the basic ones. I do have them for Power BI, Tableau, and Click. Just like we have with the kits as well, the physical kits where we have the expansion packs for those. So, folks, that's the gist of it. And let me just quickly summarize where we've been, and fully aware that I am going to get to the download. But what we covered was we went over the overall approach to why you would want to use wireframes and what makes sense about PowerPoint and the upsides of using PowerPoint and some of the downsides of using high fidelity wireframes like Adobe Illustrator and some of the other tools. I just want to add as well, I've been using virtual whiteboards a bit too for doing wireframing, and they've been getting better. And so if you want a free tool, check out Microsoft Whiteboard. I also use Miro and Mural, but those require licenses, but they're really good at doing that too. And we then talked about the skills you need in order to be successful in this space. I talked about wireframing specifically. If you do want to get more into this, and if you're not already in the course, we do have a bunch of courses. So I'd love for you to check those out. So here's a few of the courses we have. So we've got the Dashboard Adoption Formula, which is the end-to-end approach. And then we got some additional courses there. Rapid Requirements Gathering, the Executive Primer, which does the educational piece for you. Right, so if you have to get a bunch of people on board with this process, you could just send them the Executive Primer. And then the Career Accelerator if you want to be able to grow your career. And so we'll kind of touch off all those topics that we talked about. So what we'll do is, folks, if you open up a browser, I will open up a browser here as well. I'll show you where to go to get the templates. So go to deliveringdataanalytics.com so you can see the link there. I'm just going to paste this into the feeds. Okay, so let me drop that in here. And that should be going out to everyone. And so you jump in there, and we are having a sale on right now. I think it ends tomorrow. Yeah, ends tomorrow. BizLib, I just want to, you said Miro and Figma. I love Miro. I haven't used Figma. I know of it. I just don't have a license for it. But cool, yeah, folks, check that out. And does a table chart always make the cut? Geez, Joe, yeah, it nearly always does. Nearly always does. Yeah, I'd say I like a good 70-80% of the time I end up with tables. I used to resist that, actually. That used to be something I would like. No, you're not getting your tables. And it's like, well, why? Why not? Why not? If people want the tables, why not? No chewing. I was looking at the Power BI and Advanced Expansion Packs. What's the content like? Let me get back to you on that one. If you can email me, I can just send you examples of those. But basically, the Power BI, it's all the charts that are available in Power BI, basically, and then the advanced charts. They're like very rare charts that some of the platforms don't support. But like if you're building in D3 and things like that, then you would want to look at it. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I appreciate it, and would love to catch up sometime with you, Joe. So folks, on the website where you go, scroll down, you will see, I keep going down, there, okay, go to the book templates and add that to the cart, and it's going to ask for your email and some details. It'll go straight to your email. You'll get that. Later on today, I'm going to send you an offer, a discount on some more of our courses, a discount on top of the insane sale that we have right now. So folks, let me finish there and go grab your templates and check your email later today. Let me, before we get into the questions, if there are any left, finish with this data culture proverb. All insight is based on understanding your users. And so you cannot put enough emphasis on engaging people and having conversations with them and figuring out what their needs are. But putting structure around that with goals and driving actions and using those wireframes is going to be a great way to do that. So thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it, folks. I'm going to stick around for a couple of minutes if anyone has any more questions before we sign off. So I'll stick around here for, we've got 6 minutes. If there's any other questions. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, great book too. I'll have to, yes, I'd love to. Yeah, Joe, thanks so much for buying the book. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Check out Vizlib, folks, if you haven't before. And okay, and Matt, you're saying, okay, when at the start of the process, how many people do you tend to interview to gather information and requirements for a persona? Okay, I've done as few as none. I don't like doing that, Matt, but it does happen, and you usually end up with a few people, like 3 or 4 people. And that can be one-on-one, like in kind of interview format. For me, more often than not, it's in a workshop, like a virtual workshop, where I'll actually be sharing the PowerPoint and typing in live and picking charts with folks live. And for this specific example, like not using the entire end-to-end process, but just focusing on using the PowerPoint templates. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Joe. I'll see you. No chewing. Great webinar. We met in Vegas right before the pandemic. No way. The kid has been really helpful. Oh, awesome. Awesome. Well, yeah, we'll have to catch up. You'll have to remind me who you are. Brilliant. Yeah, thanks for jumping on. Looks like that's it, folks. I don't see any more questions coming in. Thanks so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. If you do download the templates, and keep an eye on your email. I'll be sending you an offer later on today. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.